afternoon. I'm going to start us off here so we stay on time. I'm Kathy Barks-Hoffman from Martin Waymeyer, and I'm joined today by a panel of leaders in the mobility space from the University Research Corridor, which is an alliance of Michigan's three major research universities: Michigan State University, the University of Michigan, and Wayne State University. Today we'll be talking about how these universities are providing the talent and research keeping Michigan at the forefront of mobility innovation, including new developments in autonomous vehicles, expanded mass transit, new approaches to road construction technology, and charging infrastructure, along with much more. So I'm joined today by my immediate right by Dr. Sutish Udpa. He's the Interim Director of MSU Mobility and the University Distinguished Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Michigan State University. Next to him is Dr. Jim Sayer. He's Director of the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute and Adjunct Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Michigan. Next to him is Dr. Zheng Dong, Co-Director of the CAR Lab and Assistant Professor of Computer Science at Wayne State University. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Udpa. The URC released a report on mobility, highlighting the role that your universities play in supporting and growing Michigan's global mobility industry through research and development, moving technologies from the lab into market, and preparing high-demand talent. How do we ensure that Michigan's mobility industry remains competitive and grows high-paying jobs? And what is the role of your universities in that effort?
So for any industry to thrive and do well, it needs several things. One of them is a solid understanding of what the community needs, in this case for transportation. But then we've also seen examples where industry can lead the customer to. Classic example is Apple, where Steve Jobs convinced us that the best thing since sliced bread is the cell phone in your pocket. So customers can be persuaded to figure out what it is that they need, although they may not know upfront. So that's one thing that the industry has to do. Second, they have to be on top of technology. Lots of things happening in the technology world, and we want to make sure that everything, is absorbed. Third, there are a whole bunch of things that are going on in the social, financial, business, legal spheres. Industry has to know what is coming down the pike and make sure that we are on top of that, because things like a pandemic can upset your plans, so we have to do that. And then you need someone who's a deep thinker in order to move the industry forward. Now, that's what the industry has to do. But how can universities like the three of us who are represented here do to help the industry move forward? We can be the provider of talent. In the last panel discussion, one of the things that was highlighted as the most important thing is talent. So we can provide that talent pool. And the second thing that we can do is help the industry with R&D. Universities have a way of absorbing lots of things together, and so we can provide top-notch R&D that allows the industry to stay abreast of things that are going on. Third, a university is a university, which means it has access to a whole bunch of disciplines. And so, it's not just engineering, it's not just technology. We can keep track of things that are going on the business end, legal end, and a whole bunch of other places. So we can bring that. And lastly, we can also be a neutral ground for arbitration. We don't have any vested interest, and so that's one thing that universities do very well. So those are some of the areas that we can contribute. The most important ones being the provider of talent and the provider of R&D ideas.
Additional comments? You have additional comments on how we can help Michigan move forward in the mobility industry?
From the academic perspective, I think universities need to be nimble in responding to the needs of the industry. Universities aren't commonly known for their nimbleness, but things in the industry are changing so rapidly. The advent of new technology, to the degree that we can, at a minimum, get students engaged in hands-on experiential learning. Again, listening to the industry, but also listening to the students as to what their interests are. If we want to keep the students in the state, there have to be jobs that are things that they're interested in, and that will help support the industry.
Dr. Dong?
Yes, I'm from computer science, so my answer is computer science. So compared to the conventional vehicles, the vehicles now are powered by computer systems, right? So there's a big challenge to the development of the mobility industry now is the shortage of the synergy research in required domains, right? For example, there are electrification, computing, sensing, and communication. A lot of related areas. Traditionally, these areas are orthogonal and developed in parallel. But for the future mobility, we need the interdisciplinary research in this area. So at the universities, we have a lot of faculty members with diverse expertise in this area. So we have the unique benefit here. So based on this, we can train and retain the talent in this area and expand their skill sets, right, in mobility. I think this is unique from the university perspective.
Great. Well, I know that a lot of what you've brought up is students and talent. And the university research corridor has a great story to tell on that, in that your three universities produce more students in the mobility field than states that we would think would be leaders ahead of Michigan, California or Massachusetts or Texas. But actually Michigan is the leader in this, which is great. Dr. Sayer, can you talk a little bit more about how we continue to pull students in for this kind of thing and how we develop them, not just for engineering, but computer science and all these other things, reaching out, like you said, consumer sentiment. How do you get people to know that this is what they're going to want, and how do you get them there, and how does talent play into that?
Yeah, probably the best example at the University of Michigan is what's called the Multi-Disciplinary Design Program. Now it's run out of the College of Engineering, but it actually takes in students from the business school, from computer science, the School of Information, and social sciences, and teams of about 10 individual students with industry problems that have been identified as the industry. So they take a much more holistic look at problems rather than strictly an engineering approach. In the real world, these students are going to have to learn to work with others, and so having them work in teams, having them work on real world problems with representatives from industry, and again, not just a single discipline, I think is a very good example of how to go about doing that.
Dr. Dong, did you have an additional comment?
Yes, I totally agree with this. Thank you.
And then Dr. Utpak.
Yeah, one of the things that Dr. Sayer pointed out was that universities have to be nimble. And this is one example where they have to show that nimbleness. Let me give you an example. One of the challenges that industry is going to face is retraining of all the workers who are already there in the system. We are moving away from the internal combustion era to an electric drive. And so we need to retrain a whole bunch of people. So for 150 years plus, our model has been to bring students to education. We brought them to campuses, we trained them, we did all sorts of things. That model has to change now. If the workers are going to be in factories, we have got to transport education to where the student is. So that's going to require a whole bunch of new things that universities have to do. The good news is that the universities are nimble, and we have seen evidence of that in all 3 universities that constitute the corridor.
With that concentration of talent, hopefully that will bring more and more jobs here to Michigan. But you're also doing quite a bit of research in this area, which is another thing that I'm sure is helping the mobility industry in Michigan. Your universities together conducted more than $542 million in mobility-related R&D over the past 5 years, which is quite a bit. Starting with Dr. Dong, could you talk about some of the examples of some of the research that your university is doing?
Yeah, sure. So, collaborate with the National Science Foundation, we are developing an IUCRC center. IUCRC, short for Industry University Collaborative Research Center. And the title of the center is ECAT, Electric, Connected and Autonomous Technologies for Mobility. It directly reflects the concept of mobility. So in this center, we will perform interdisciplinary research on the electrification, connected autonomous driving systems, wireless communication, and real-time edge computing. So we aim to accelerate the mobility, to accelerate the mobility method from conventional vehicles to autonomous vehicles in the future. That's one of the example research we are performing in this area.
Thank you. Dr. Udpak, could you talk about Michigan State?
So I'll give 2 examples. One of them was to sort of invest in modifying or equipping the campus with all the instrumentation required to serve as a test bed. So there are many test tracks around the country where you can run these autonomous vehicles. The one that we are focusing on is an attempt to create a test bed that allows us to study the last mile, first mile interaction. So we have the ability to study what is going on, what the connection is between a pedestrian on the street and the autonomous vehicle. So we have equipped just about every intersection with cameras that allows us to study things. We have equipped each of the intersections with what are called roadside units. We have equipped a number of vehicles with what are called onboard units in order to study all these interactions. We think this is a unique facility. The only other facility that I can think of is the one that Alphabet is implemented in the city of San Francisco. But the advantage that we have on campus is that we have our own police force, we control our own streets, and so we can create test conditions that are specific to what we are trying to measure. So that's one thing that we are doing. The other major project that we have embarked on is lightweighting. Now, you and I drive vehicles that weigh several tons, largely because they are designed to withstand a 55 mile an hour impact. But today you can buy vehicles that come equipped with sensors that can detect anything miles away and move the vehicle away from harm's way. So, given that, can we build a vehicle that is far lighter, say 1,500 pounds, and that means the range goes up to 1,000 miles. So a lot of the issues that you typically associate with electric vehicles like range anxiety immediately go away. So, but then nothing comes for free. There are a whole bunch of challenges that need to be addressed if you build a vehicle that is as light as that. So we've got a whole research group that is looking at that.
It's never as easy as it sounds, right?
Yes, yes.
Dr. Sayer, some of the things you're doing in research at U of M?
Yeah, obviously throughout the university there are a lot of folks that are working in the mobility space. There's a lot of work done on the technical side, battery development, sensor development, and testing. I think the 2 projects I'd want to highlight are ones where we're actively working in the community to deploy technology, first being part of the Michigan Mobility Collaborative, which we're working with the City of Detroit to deploy autonomous vehicles in underserved communities. There are a lot of obviously technical challenges, but social challenges as well. And so working, like I say, the City of Detroit, but also Ford Motor Company to do that deployment, hoping to actually solve some real world problems in our backyard, here in the City of Detroit. The other, which is being led by Dr. Henry Liu, which is the deployment of sensors and intelligence in the infrastructure and the roadway itself. We don't believe that level 4 and level 5 vehicles will truly come to fruition without some information from the infrastructure. So we have instrumented a roundabout in the southern part of Ann Arbor, and we're using that to gather information and do things like modeling of traffic, prediction of traffic behavior, and we'll be able to broadcast messages via vehicle-to-vehicle communication to those individual vehicles to warn them of pending crashes, for example.
That sounds very useful. Anybody who's gone through a roundabout, you have to think about it, right? So, you were talking about Detroit. Can we share a little bit more about some of the research that's not just happening on campus, but is happening in other places? And whoever wants to jump in here is fine.
We have developed very cool indoor and outdoor platforms for autonomous vehicles. We call it the Hydra series. So, an indoor platform, the Hydra 1, it consists of all the functions for the autonomous vehicle, like the perception modules and the sensing modules and the communication modules and the computing modules. That's for the indoor platform to evaluate all the functions of the autonomous vehicle. And also, we have built a real vehicle based on the Ford Fusion, and we can evaluate the vehicles in the real scenarios. And then our platform is on the second floor, and it's in the auto show. So welcome us to go to our booth and to see the very cool platform.
Dr. Udpai, anything?
I'll mention again a couple of examples. We are engaged in some research that looks into what these autonomous vehicles can do to support underserved communities. So we are working with the research groups in Detroit to see how we can serve people with disabilities, how we can serve people who are on the older side of, again, communities that are underserved. So we are gathering a lot of data and making that data available to people who want to look at this. The other thing that we're doing is, if you come to the campus, you will see a bus that is operated by a company called Adastic. And we're gathering a whole bunch of data related to how this vehicle can meet the needs of people, again, with disabilities, both mental as well as physical, and also studying how such a public transportation service needs to perform. So we are sharing that data with a whole bunch of cities and communities so that others who are interested in this thing can benefit from that also.
Well, which kind of brings us to the future. And, you talk about being able to create autonomous vehicles or ways of transportation for people with disabilities. I know I have elderly parents that I worry about driving. So, a lot of this I know is aimed at, getting able-bodied from places to places, but we're also talking about just ways that make it safer and easier for people of all abilities to get around. So I just wonder, we're not quite to the Jetsons with flying cars yet, but if you wanted to start, Dr. Upad, talking about what the future of mobility looks like.
This is early days. 15 years ago, I had to go through the pain of discarding my BlackBerry and buying an Apple phone. And look at what the phone can do today. So the vehicle that we have today is in its infancy. Lots of things are coming down the pike, And let's brace ourselves for a number of interesting things that are going to happen in the next 20, 30 years. This auto show is going to look very different in under 20 years.
Yeah, there are lots of things coming down the pike technology-wise, and I think we'll be looking at a lot of aerial delivery in terms of delivering things to our homes immediately to us, as opposed to us having to travel to get them. There's a lot of talk and early prototypes in urban aerial mobility, and that is something that we need to keep our eye on. That'll reduce commute times, but we at the same time we have to be very careful that we don't create even greater inequity between people who need mobility solutions and don't yet have them.
And Dr. Dong?
Yeah, so our future, I think, from the computer science perspective, the future, the vehicle is a software-defined vehicle. So what is a software-defined vehicle? So when you look at your smartphone, it's a software-defined device, right? So for the software-defined vehicle is that, especially for the autonomous vehicle, when the drivers are free from the driving tasks, so they need to be able to access everything they can access at home or in the office or even in the metaverse, right? That's the future. We think the future is the software-defined vehicle.
All right, well, thank you. I do want to open it up to questions, and you can come up to the front here, or Chelsea may be taking the mic around, but I know we have one here in the front if anybody wants to ask some questions. All right, a shy crowd today. Okay, well, thank you. I want to thank our panel, and I'm so excited about all the work that's being done at the URC universities. I mean, it truly is work that we are all going to see in our own lives at some point. And it's all built at, working around Michigan's mobility industry, which is exciting as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.